As it turns out, all we managed in the first session of play is 18.4 overs. Rain that delayed the start, rain that's resulted in an early lunch. But it was an 18.4 overs of Test cricket. Be without loss as lunch has been taken. 46 without loss in just over 18 overs. Steve Harmison and BBS Laxman with me on ESPN Cricket for Matches. We try and look back at that session. It's another session where India's opening batters in Test cricket continue to impress Laxman.
Yeah, I thought both KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma applied themselves really well. It was good to see that the way Rohit Sharma capitalized on the loose deliveries, especially that over where it four boundaries in that Sam Curran's over. So overall, I think Joe Root will be feeling really disappointed because after winning the toss with four quality fast bowlers in his playing 11 and not to penetrate or not to get the results probably he would have expected or England would have expected, probably would have disappointed Joe Root. But credit to both the openers. KL Rahul again continuing from where he left off in Nottingham, the way he assessed the conditions. I thought the conditions were ideal for batting. There was nothing for the bowlers, not much of lateral movement, not much of swing on offer. Neither the wicket has got pace or carry. So I think it's a good batting surface, and I think they've set the foundation. It's just about to convert this foundation into a big score.
Well, four fast bowlers, Steve, but only three of them used, and one of them wasn't Mark Wood. What did England get right, and what did they get wrong in that first hour or so of play?
Yeah, surprised that Mark Wood didn't feature in that session. I'm actually surprised Mark Wood didn't feature with a new ball. I would have given him the new ball, especially from the pavilion end against two right-handed opening batsmen who not massive amounts of foot movement. I think they've batted beautifully. I think they're standing still, less moving parts. They're not going, hands aren't going out in front of themselves or to the side. The player letting the ball come to them. What you want is an opening batsman. But when you're facing two 80-ish mile an hour bowlers and the lateral movement, because there's no real swing, the lateral movement is relatively slow. If you don't push at the ball, you've got a good chance of hanging around and surviving. Like VVS said, when the ball was there to hit, Rohit put it away nicely because he likes to deal in boundaries. So I'm a bit disappointed from that point of view from an England. Yeah, some of the decisions. We didn't have a short leg, but we had a man on the fence for an 80 mile an hour bowler. Doesn't really make a great deal of sense, to be honest. And yeah, Sam Curran, I thought bowled from the wrong end. I actually thought Sam Curran bowled from the wrong end. And it's not if it's not swinging, I didn't see the point of getting Sam on then. I thought that should have been Mark Wood. But take nothing away. India, I think, have batted lovely. I really think India have batted nicely. When the ball's been there to put away, it's been put away, and I think they've been very watchful. Joe will be disappointed because it does look a benign pitch where there's not a great deal happening. And we had a shower just on the start of play, and it seemed to come and go, and then the clouds seemed to go with it. So I think that's when Joe Root might have been running down the steps of Lord's Great Pavilion thinking, have I made the wrong decision here?
Has he, Lakshman?
I thought so. Yes, definitely. Because when you ask that question, is it a good toss to lose? I thought yes, definitely. Because having played in England and also at Lords, until and unless the wicket is damp or the grass is really fresh, it's always going to be a good batting surface. And I just feel that deep down, keeping in mind the brittleness of the England top order, and with the overcast conditions and the quality of Indian fast bowler, probably that must have forced Joe Root to have taken that decision. I think it's a very negative or a defensive decision, according to me. But I think the wicket looks placid, and it's a great toss to lose for India. And as Steve rightly mentioned, that they're one batsman short with no Ashwin. There's not much of depth after Ravindra Jadeja, so it becomes that more important for all the batsmen who get a start to convert that into a big score or probably a three-figure mark, which didn't happen in Nottingham.
Do you get the impression, Steve, that with a different bunch of batters at one, two, three, maybe Joe Root would have taken a different call?
Possibly, yeah. I accept that. I think that is not a bad assumption. I just think sometimes at Lords, you literally the clouds could make a fool of you as a captain. I remember a few years ago, it should have been my debut in 2000 against Zimbabwe, where we didn't know the team until about 10, 15 10-20. And Nasser Hussain, literally, when he ran to put his blazer on, he changed his mind from picking me and he picked Ed Giddens because a great big dirty cloud came over. And he changed his mind. Picked the swing bowler. Ed got 5 wickets. England won the Test match, so you could say he made the right decision. But it can make a fool out of you. But definitely, I think that would have come in his mind. Change somebody at the top three. There's a dark cloud. The dark clouds are over. Delayed toss, delayed start. It might just be easier if we go back and revert back to security type and go with our bowlers because our great Jimmy Anderson is fit and he will relish this situation. So yeah, I think it is a right observation that the problems that we've had at 1, 2, 3 might have been in the back of Joe's mind when he decided to bowl first.
Well, it's nice that one of Nasser Hussain's colleagues talks about something he got right at a toss. As against what we
Yeah.
generally discuss about Nasser Hussain as captain. But impressive from Rohit Sharma again, and there's still part of perhaps the Rohit Sharma discussion as an opening Test batter, Lakshman, that we're waiting to see fulfilled, which is converting a start into a big score. But he seems to have totally nailed this. The other part of being a Test player. He seems to almost always, whether the new ball out, defense is spot on. Is he put that debate to rest now as a solid overseas option opener for you? Has he got all the goods now?
Yeah, without a iota of doubt, Ronak, because if there was one thing which everyone were apprehensive when Rohit Sharma decided, or rather the team management selection committee wanted him to open, was he will be successful in Indian conditions, because we know that he's got the ability of scoring big runs. He can take on the spinners, literally demolish them. And once he gets his start, on Indian surfaces, it's the ideal place, ideal conditions to bat as a batsman, and that too of the caliber and the quality of Rohit Sharma. But the only apprehension was how will he fare, when he's traveling abroad, when he's playing likes of Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad on helpful conditions, moving conditions, or when he goes to Australia playing Pat Cummins, Hazelwood, or Trent Bolt and Saudi in New Zealand conditions. But what we have seen, even in the World Test Championship final, in both the Test matches so far, is he looks really organized and solid. So I think that is the biggest tick, biggest positive for Team India, because he's not only a flamboyant batsman, but he's also a batsman who's hungry to perform and prove to himself that he can be a top-class opener, top-class Test batsman, not only in conditions suiting his style of play, but even in challenging conditions. Now coming to the second part, which we spoke about in the last match, I think that is the easiest part, because once you get your eye in and someone of the quality of Rohit Sharma will get that right, and once he gets that 100, I think a lot more hundreds, a lot more big scores will flow from his bat. But the toughest challenge for anyone from middle order converted into an opener, the toughest challenge is how to counter that new ball, which he has done brilliantly so far in his short spell as opener in overseas conditions.
Does he strike you as the kind of batter, Lakshman? We've spoken of his concentration at times. Does he strike you as the kind of batter whose radar is almost up and stronger more when there are adverse batting conditions, and suddenly that just sort of drops, once it's easier, and then he finds a way to get out? Do you think this gets the best out of him because he's focusing more at that point, or is that for every batsman?
No, I think that's for every batsman, but I think more so for batsmen like Rohit Sharma. For me, he is a supremely talented batsman. A supremely talented batsman always relishes a good challenge. And batting as a top order batsman is not something which came natural to Rohit Sharma in red ball format. I mean, it was perfect for Rohit Sharma opening in white ball, and we've seen since 2013, since the time Dhoni asked him to open, what a different Rohit Sharma we have seen in T20 and ODI format. But I think this is out of his comfort zone, and I think supremely talented players always relish these kind of challenges. And it's not to prove others, it's more to prove to yourself that even though I am supremely talented, for me ultimately to be rated as an excellent international cricketer, I have to perform in conditions which are not which are alien to me, which are not in my comfort zone. Second thing is, all the players I have known or played with want to be, prove to themselves and everyone that we are a very good Test player. Only then I think the kind of respect which they get from the cricketing fraternity, they can get. And that's what I think Rohit Sharma wants, to have that respect that he is not only a good white ball batsman, but he is a more than capable red ball batsman.
All right. Well, this is only 18.4 overs of evidence. Things could change once they come back in the next session. We'll keep that chat going. But we've also decided to just go into an interesting conversation on ESPN Cricket for Match Day about just batting in this era, comparing it with an era that, say, VVS Lakshman and Stephen Harmison played in. There are many who watched in those eras and compare it to now and think that was perhaps the more challenging time to bat. We've actually dug out some numbers. We'd love to get VVS and Steve's thoughts. We've not seen India put down a score in excess of 400 in a while now. Teams generally don't seem to be scoring in excess of 350 as often as they did when Steve and VVS played. And that's not just a perception, the numbers back it up. So let's just bring out the first set of numbers here. This is the percentage of team scores of more than 350 in an innings. We're looking at different periods now. You can see it's above 30% in that decade from 2000 to 2010. And then as we go to 2011 to 2015, there's a drop of about 3%. And 2016 to date, that drop almost doubles to what it was between 2000 and 2010. So we're looking at percentage-wise teams scoring 350 a lot less than they used to. So I'd love to get Steve and VVS in on it. Steve, let me come to you first. Funny enough, as a bowler, I just want to think of what your first reaction is when you see something like that. Does your instinct go down more to quality of batting dropping, or does it go to quality of bowling improving?
I think there's a wide range of combination and factor. I think you look at in England in 2003, I think it was, or 2002, first year of the T20, what is now the Blast. I think that was a huge change and shift from 50 over competition. So 50 over competition, if you got 240, 240, 250, that was a decent score. That was a match winning score. Prior to that, and then once 2020 came around, the scoring rates went up. The one day's 50 over competition went up, and you were seeing scores of in excess of 300. And then in 2000, around about 7, 8, the IPL kicked off, and then the Big Bash around the world. And I think because of that, batsman's technique was all about hitting the ball. And I think that's where I think the bowlers have had to survive in white ball games because the pitches are good. You know, the boundaries are smaller, the bats seem bigger, and the balls flying out all around the ground. But I think the bowlers in Test match cricket have actually thrived because of techniques are different. Looking to hit the ball, looking to play away from the body. The chat we've just had, VVS talked about how you perform overseas in alien conditions from an Indian batsman's point of view, not playing away from your body, holding yourself in tight, letting the ball come to you, playing from within your sort of body parameter. That's what you've got to do in England. But I don't think that happens around the world, all around the world now. And I think bowlers do exploit that. And I look at somebody who is, close to my heart, who is for me the best ever seam bowler that's played the game, Jimmy Anderson. I always describe Jimmy. He is the best exponent of a poor technique or a technique not up to Test match standard. Anywhere and around off stump, if you've got a little gap between bat and pad going onto off stump, Jimmy Anderson will find it. He work a way out because he's got a lot of balls to do it. He can work the crease and the angles and his little seam positions. And that, for me, is why we have seen a massive drop in Test match cricket scoring rate and in scores. I don't think the players are any worse. They're definitely not better. There's some great players around my time, and I don't think there's as many great Test match players around now. But then you flip it over, one day is completely different. So from Test match point of view, I think the bowler has got better because the batsman has got his mind on other things. And I think these other things are what's contributing to where Test match cricket is as a whole at this moment in time.
Okay, so that's a layer of factors that Steve points out. Lakshman, before I get you in, some more numbers that I'll just throw at you. It's about batters individually, how their numbers have been, what their averages have been over different periods of play. And if we look at the batting average split in tests, these are batters with at least 1,000 runs. We have a decent sample size to work with. And you look at the percentage of batters that had averages of 40 in excess, of 50 in excess. You could see that right on the right of your screen, 2004 to 2007. You had a larger percentage of batters that averaged above 45, 50, 60 in that period. 2018 to now, and you see a large chunk of batters seem to be averaging within, say, 30 and 40, or maybe at best your mid 40s. So that again is a evidence that batting averages also seem to be on their way down. So Steve mentions a number of reasons. Lakshman, what's your first thought when I throw these numbers at you?
My first thought is the decline in the defensive technique. of international test batsmen. And when I say defensive technique, it's not only about the technique. A lot to do is the way they think. And I think that's one of the reason why I think not many batsmen in world cricket, especially in Test match format, are ready to grind it when you're facing a challenging spell from a quality bowler like Jimmy Anderson or Trent Bolt or Bumrah or Hazelwood or Pat Cummins. I think that is very, very obvious, and that's the reason why you have a lot of low scores. The batting average of individuals has come down, and also there's a big gulf between top teams, top 3 or 4 teams, and the rest of the team, which wasn't the case till at least 2012 or 13, because you had a strong Sri Lanka side, you had a strong West Indies side, you had a strong, even to some extent, Zimbabwe side, till the time the Flower brothers, Campbell, all of them were playing. So I think it's just the gulf between the top 3 or 4 sides and the rest is actually becoming much more wider, and the defensive skill sets of and the techniques of the batsmen are compromised. And the main reason for that, a lot of batsmen from this generation are wanting to be recognized as good white ball players. They know that there's a better career option. There are a lot more options to be successful as a professional cricketer if they're playing franchise cricket. If they're very good white ball players, they represent the country in 50-over format or 2020 format. And now you've got various other formats like T10 is coming up. There is 100. So a lot of formats which are emerging and which are financially rewarding are more, encouraging the batsmen to be more aggressive, and that's reflecting whenever they're playing the longer version of the game. And that's why even if you see there's a stark contrast between the batsmen of the caliber of Virat Kohli, Babar Azam, Kane Williamson, Joe Root, Steve Smith, and then the others who are averaging less than 40. Whereas in our days, if I may say, if you're averaging less than 50, you're an okay test cricketer, but for you to have that respect, you have to be above 50.
Okay, I'm going to get some more numbers and keep this conversation going. Talk about perhaps credit to the bowlers as well. There are other factors that we must bring in on how pitches tend to be prepared, say in the last 6-7 years. That could also add to the numbers here. But let's just take some more numbers when it comes to run rates. Gives you another idea, another indication of how there's been a slight dip, maybe not as much. If you look at just run rates in Test cricket, go year-wise, looking at 3.24 in 2016, that's gone down slightly. It's not a you can look at that and think that it's got a slight dip, but it's still above 3. There often is an argument made about the kind of pitches that are being prepared for Test cricket these days, Steve. Most commonly in our part of the world, remember South Africa series 2014, where genuinely there were too many pitches that you think were not batting friendly. Now, is that generally a practice around the world? Boards preparing, or home teams wanting pitches that are more bowler friendly to expose these batting deficiencies you've discussed?
I just look at the scoring rate goes with how the quality of the batsman and the team's total comes with it. If a team scores 400, the scoring rate will be decent and be high, reasonably high. If it scores 450, 500, you will get a faster scoring rate because you might go at 2 and over for the first 25 overs. But if you're not losing any wickets, you have your power players in the middle that will quickly catch it up. And by the time you've faced 120, 130 overs, your scoring rate will be about 3.5, 3.4, 3.5. So I think it comes down to the quality of the batsmanship as a collective unit. If you're consistently seeing scores of 180, like we did at Trent Bridge for England, or under 2, I think England have had 3 scores in the last 9 or 10 Test matches over 225 or 250, then all of a sudden you're always battling. So it'd be slower scoring rate, and that will have an effect over the course of the graphs that we've just shown. So I just think it goes hand in hand. If you've got good batsmen who score runs on half decent pitches, the scoring rate will go up. So look, I think the bowlers have cashed in better because of batsmen's techniques. I think the pitches around the world have been very much similar to what they've been for the 5 years previous to that and the 5 years previous to that. I just think there's a priority shift in the modern generation, and that is towards actually hitting the ball rather than leaving it and defending it. But the problem you've got with that trying to hit the ball is in a test match, if the ball moves for a long period with skillful bowlers, 3 slips, a short leg, you've got more chance of getting out when you're playing away from your body with the techniques that are we see in the modern generation.
I wonder if you were the current set of fast bowlers watching this discussion and thinking if, okay, I'm not being given enough credit here. So let's just see the numbers for strike rates for fast bowlers over time. And that'll show that the strike rates have improved. Yes, you can attribute it to the reason Steve and VVS have both alluded to a little while back. But that's what we're seeing, that if you're looking in, say, closer to 2021, strike rates of bowlers at 58 are better than what they were, say, 10 years back or even 20 years back, where they're in the 60s. Now, how much of this is down, Steve, to you look at the modern day fast bowler and you think these guys are fitter, perhaps the intensity doesn't drop as much? Do you tend to get the impression that they've got fitter bowlers than they were in your time?
I would say fitter bowlers, yes. Stronger bowlers are the better. I would argue not really. I would say, are they more durable? I would say no. But what I think it comes again, it comes hand in hand with what the batting. If your bowling team's out because the batting team isn't up to the standard, not getting runs on the board. If your bowling team's out for under 300, as a bowler, you're getting more confident. Your ability to try things is a lot easier because you feel confident that you can knock this team over, and the guy at the other end is you've got him in the position you're in. You never feel tired when you're bowling well, so that has a knock-on effect from your mindset point of view. So yes, I think the bowlers have come into their own in recent times, but to say fast bowling is better now than what it was during when I was playing, I think the likes of Glenn McGrath, Wazim Akram, Wakar Yunus, all these Curtly Ambrose, Courtney Walsh, I think all these guys would disagree with that. So they were bigger, they were better, and they were stronger than me. So I'm going to back my guys on that side rather than the likes of Hazelwood, Cummins, Anderson, Broad, and all that now. So I just think the whole thing goes hand in hand. But I do think the bowlers are far superior than the batsmen at this moment in time in Test match cricket, and I think that's largely down to techniques.
I think, Ronak, you mentioned about 2 points. One is the pitches,
Yes.
and one is the fitness of the bowlers. The lesser the bowler bowls, the more fresh he will be, the more energetic he will be to come back and bowl in the next innings. Now, we've seen that graph, and also we've known how many teams are now scoring or posting totals which are more than 400 consistently, which means that the legs and of the bowlers are much fresher than probably when a bowler has to bowl in every innings more than 100, 150 overs. Now for a team to play more than 100 overs, that means it is a brilliant batting effort. But you're supposed to, in Test match cricket, play minimum 120 overs. So automatically that will help the bowler to recover quickly and to always bowl with the intensity which will pose a lot of threat to the batsman. The second thing is about pitches. Whenever the pitches are going to be difficult, which have been the case, if you mentioned about South Africa, that was a minefield according to me.
Yeah.
Recently concluded India-England series in India. I think that was very tough for batsmen on those turning tracks. But whenever the pitches are tough, that is when the skill set and the technique and the mindset of the batsman is tested, and that is where the modern batsman is lacking. When we talk about the test match in Pune, where Steve Smith got a brilliant century, when we talk about the test match in Mumbai, where Kevin Peterson played one of the dream innings in his career, I mean, those wickets were also challenging, but the technique and the mindset of those batsmen really stood up. So now there is a vast difference between batsmen who stand out as special, what we call as Fab 4 or Fab 5, and then you have batsmen who actually struggle in those kind of conditions. And that's why the batting average, that's why the number of overs a team is sustaining or is lasting, and the average first innings totals are coming down drastically.
Okay, so I guess as we sort of end this on a lighter note, I'd love to ask both of you, Lakshman, if you would have had to choose, would you have rather batted in this era than the one you batted in?
Well, if you ask me to choose, I would just love batting any era. Yeah, but I just feel that see, every era has got its own challenges. I think also with DRS, we didn't have DRS. I think with DRS you're getting a lot more LBW compared to probably in our playing time. We don't know how it would have factored in when you're playing quality spinners like Murli, Vaughan, and Dan Vittori and rest of them. So there are various factors, and you can't compare eras. Every era will have its own challenges and its own advantages. I just feel that the modern generation of batsmen want to be a good white ball batsman, while they want to also perform in Test match cricket, but their technique and their mindset is compromised. And this technique and this mindset is exposed or challenged whenever you're facing a quality bowler in conditions which are alien to you. And that's why we are praising the way Rohit Sharma has adapted from out and out white ball opening batsman to opening batsman in Test match cricket, which is not his natural position. So I think that is where there is a biggest and a stark difference from Test cricket in our generation during our time and the current generation of Test cricketers.
Yeah, it's due respect to all the points you made, but DRS important one, Steve, isn't it? That what could have been those numbers had we had DRS in those eras?
Yeah, absolutely. Swings and roundabouts, because I think you talk about 2005 DRS. If Damien Martin had DRS in 2005, he never would have been out. Because Steve Buckner was our best friend for about 4 innings that Damien Martin had. So, look, sometimes it goes first, sometimes it doesn't. But I think when you talk about the generations, the way I look at it is I love the time I played. If I look my debut in 2002, if you fast forward it for 10 years, and then another 10 years, we get to where we are now. I look at world-class batsmen. How many teams had world-class batsmen in that time, that 10 years between 2002 and 2012? And I would say nearly every team had 2, 3, possibly 4. I would argue that as the years have gone on, I don't see that in Test match cricket now, and I think that's where obviously where the white ball came into it. So that's the way I look at it. DRS, yes, it's been a great friend for the bowler. Sometimes it can help the batsman as well, but from a generation point of view, I agree. It's hard with VVS. It's hard to compare eras, but as a bowler, I love playing at the time I played because I played against some of the best players of all time during that time, and that was the great challenge as a bowler to get up and every single day go out knowing that every team you played against there was a world class player, if not 2 or 3 in the opposition.
All right. Always a conversation that is intriguing in Test cricket, especially when you compare eras. There's never sometimes a right or wrong in it. Imagine having this conversation with Ian Chappell or Sunil Gavaskar or Michael Holding, and they'll have perhaps a very unique take on what was the toughest era to bat in. But anyway, thank you very much, VVS Laxman, Stephen Harmison. This has been fascinating on our match day spotlight. We'll continue to delve deep into issues, especially on our lunchtime shows through the course of this test match. Just 18.4 overs then. Let's hope we get an uninterrupted session of play going forward. And Steve, I'm guessing you'd like to see Mark Wood in it right away whenever play does resume.
I'd love to see Mark Wood take obviously there's 2 balls left in Ollie Robinson's over. Yeah. I'd like to see Mark Wood run in from the pavilion end and just see if he can get the Indian batsman onto the back foot, which will challenge them coming forward on the front foot. Fingers crossed.
It looked like that break came at just the wrong time, Laxman. Just when Rohit and Rahul were beginning to, make the most of conditions. How will this break affect them now? Is it going to be easier to bat, you reckon, or still a challenge once they come back?
No, I think anyway the break was coming close to the lunch interval. So I think as an international batsman, as a Test batsman, you know how to switch off and switch on. You know that you can't take your mind off the target at hand, and I'm sure that they will be mentally ready once the game resumes. Because that is a very important aspect if you have to be successful as a Test batsman. You have to always know when to have your peak concentration and when to calm it down and switch off.
Right. Rohit Sharma in his nervous 30s in Test cricket as they turn out to be. Let's hope he can build on that. KL Rahul with a very gritty 10. So let's pick up the conversation at tea time. Let's hope we have a full session. Like I said, on ESPN Rain for Matchday, we'll be with Stephen Harmison and VVS Laxman. Do join us there.